Howdy, readers. I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and it is time for the first two-shelf tour in about 6 weeks. Sorry I've gotten away from them here lately. We're going to jump right back in. As you can see, we've got some Peter Matheson over here, which was actually up on the shelf above it on the last two-shelf tour. But we've added some books to our kind of early fiction shelves in the last month or so, which has moved things down a little bit. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. So I'm going to be doing the third and fourth shelves of our third fiction bookcase tonight. So 2 books from this shelf. And we're going to start with this one here. And this is Ian McEwan's Enduring Love, okay? And Hot Air Balloon, very famously on the cover. So this is, strangely, I think, one of his lesser-known books, but it's also one of his better books. The only novel of his that I've read that I would prefer to this, I would say, is Atonement, and that would be stretching it. Enduring Love is a novel, just a brilliant novel, about a horrific accident and what happens in the wake of that. How the trauma of it basically affects one man in particular. His cheese slides completely off of his cracker, and he becomes obsessed with another man who witnessed the accident. And as the cover will tell us, it's a hot air balloon accident. And if you've read this book, or even if you've seen the movie based on this book, you will understand better than most why I have an intense phobia of hot air balloons. I will never go up in one. I find it difficult to even look at them in the sky, which is tough because we have a hot air balloon festival here in Casper every summer. If I'm driving along and I see one in the sky, I have to put my hand up like I'm, shielding my eyes from the sun or something to block it from view because it makes me so anxious. That is how powerful the hot air balloon accident at the beginning of this book and the beginning of the film based on this book is. So if you're looking for something that is deeply literary and also a little bit scary and a little bit thrilling, Enduring Love is a book that you should definitely check out. All right. Next, we are going to talk briefly about this one here. And this is The People's Act of Love by James Meek. All right, this was longlisted for the Booker Prize way back when. I can't even remember when this came out. And I'd owned it for a long, long time before I finally read it. And I think I read it early last year. And this is a novel set in early 20th century Russia. And it is about a lot of things. It is about community. It is about religious extremism. And if I remember correctly, it is in some part about revolution. Here, I'll just read the back of it real quickly for you. Set in a time of great social upheaval, warfare, and terrorism, and against a stark, lawless Siberia at the end of the Russian Revolution, The People's Act of Love portrays the fragile coexistence of a beautiful independent mother raising her son alone, a megalomaniac Czech captain and his restless regiment, and a mystical separatist Christian sect, when a mysterious charismatic stranger trudges into their snowy village with a frighteningly outlandish story to tell. Its balance is shaken to the core. I tried reading this book numerous times, and I got like a page or 2 pages into it. And there was just something about the prose, something about just the difficulty of the Russian names, frankly. I just couldn't find my way into it. But the cover was so lovely, and the description was so compelling that I could just kind of never get rid of it. And so last year, I chose this book for my Holy Fools of Shepherd book club, and therefore forced myself to read it. And I'm really glad that I did, because it's freaking brilliant. This was one of the best 5 or 6 books that I read last year. So when winter rolls around, and if you're wanting a novel that is just completely involving and a little strange, incredibly beautiful, and treats the subjects of politics and religion, community with utmost seriousness, you can't really do much better than The People's Act of Love. Continuing on, this here is the 4th shelf on this bookcase, and we're going to look at books that are almost at the furthest extremes of the shelf. So, the first one we're going to look at is Spring Snow by Yukio Mishima. So this is the first book in a quartet of novels called The Sea of Fertility. It's still the only one of the 4 that I've read. I haven't been as keen as I might be to read the rest of the novels in the quartet because they have different translators, which doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why Vintage would do that. This first translation is glorious. It's just a beautiful book. Mishima, for those of you who don't know, was a brilliant writer, but was also not all there. Let's just say died an unusual death. We'll just put it that way. Probably the most unusual death of any writer in history, frankly. We read this book in the Shade Tree a number of years ago, and the thing I remember best about this book. So I don't know how late it was at night, but I was laying in bed reading, and was just falling asleep. I mean, through no fault of the books, right? I was just incredibly tired and couldn't keep my eyes open. And then all of a sudden, there on the page, there was this scene between the protagonist and the girl that he loves, and they take this rickshaw ride together in the snow. And there's no ooh la la, there's no nookie, there's no sex, I don't even think there's a kiss in the scene. But it was, and probably remains to this day, the most sensual scene I have ever read. I was immediately awake. It was absolutely captivating. That scene was just, it was just stunning. I mean, it was literally take your breath away beautiful. And just so erotically charged, even though, like I said, everybody's fully clothed, but it was just electric, just absolutely electric. I would recommend reading this book for that scene alone, Spring Snow, Yukio Mishima. And the second book on this shelf that I wanted to talk about is actually one that I have not read, and that is V.S. Naipaul's The Enigma of Arrival. So as many of you probably know, Naipaul just died a couple of days ago. I've still never read any of his work, but this is the one I've most wanted to read all these years, in large part because of this cover. I just think the cover is just really, really beautiful. This was not, by any stretch of the imagination, his best received book. I read somewhere once that when it was published, Salman Rushdie just raked it over the coals in his review of it. But when Ben and I were in London recently, when we were walking with Sarah Waters along the Thames, we got to talking about Naipaul because he was up for the Golden Booker at that time. Like, they awarded the prize that evening to Michael Ondaatje. And she talked to us about In a Free State, which was the book that was up for the Golden Booker. And how she had mixed feelings about it, but that she really, really loved this book. I am more inclined to take Sarah Waters' word on a book recommendation over a Salman Rushdie's caution against a book. So that's V.S. Naipaul. That's it for this 2-shelf tour. I will try to be back with another one in a week or 2 weeks at most. I've got a tag that I've got planned, a couple of tags I've got planned actually, for the next week and a half. So you'll be seeing me in those videos. And until then, adios.